According to Martusiewicz, Edmondson, and Lupinacci in their book Eco-Justice Education, class is defined as a group of people who share similar social and economic positions in a hierarchized society, and thus similar identities and experiences. Hand in hand with social classes come inequality and hierarchy. As soon as we begin to distinguish and differentiate people based on their money, jobs, race, and experiences, a hierarchy begins to come into play with labels of who is better or more well off than the other. Martusiewicz, Edmondson, and Lupinacci refer to this process of distinguishing as a cultural habit of hierarchy and the logic of domination as the larger frame in which class divisions seem to be accepted or taken for granted as part of the natural order of things. Therefore, class inequality and social hierarchy has become a bad habit that has been instilled for centuries that makes people feel comfortable and like they have a place to fit into in society. People refer to these structures as a coping mechanism to comfortably make their way through life. In Eco-Justice Education, Martusiewicz, Edmondson, and Lupinacci explain how those who own and control the means of production occupy the top of the hierarchy, controlling access to resources and decision-making power in both the economic and the broader political realms, thus entitling these citizens to higher-level power and authority, which is hard for others in lower classes to overcome. Class societies and hierarchies have been present for a long time in certain areas of the world. During the Middle Ages in Europe, individuals were born into families of power and authority and were born into titles such as prince, princess, king, queen, etc. The lowest of social classes during the Middle Ages were the peasants who knew that they could never even attempt to become someone such as a king. The big question that Martusiewicz, Edmondson, and Lupinacci pose in Eco-Justice Education is, why did people believe, though not all did, that the ruling class had a right to rule? Just because individuals were born into these high-held families did not mean that they were capable of making executive decisions. The authors of Eco-Justice Education outline 3 deficit theories which explain why individuals resort to these social hierarchies and class structures. The first is the genetic deprivation theory, which bases an individual's success on their mental capacity. Meaning, if a person had a great mental capacity, they would see more success in life, while the individuals who had a lesser mental capacity would remain in the working class or in poverty. The next theory is the cultural deprivation theory, which explains that students who were born into certain cultures had failed to teach them key habits, skills, and ways of thinking leading to educational or economic success in mainstream society. However, isn't the overarching idea of education to educate the students and encourage them to soar past their limits and succeed? If that is the primary goal of education, then why are students from certain cultures or from poverty not surpassing these limits? The third deficit theory refers to at-risk students who are targeted due to external circumstances that may be affecting their education and their ability to succeed. These students typically come from working class and poor families. These students are being labeled and set up for failure before they are even given the opportunity to want to succeed, but are often subconsciously forced into the belief that they do not have the potential to succeed. Typically, schools in urban areas do not have the resources that suburban schools contain due to social class structure and inequality. In the book Radical Possibilities, Public Policy, Urban Education, and a New Social Movement, Jean Anion states that if these urban students were provided with the same educational resources and opportunities as the more fortunate suburban schools, then their academic achievement may increase because they will become more motivated to learn. Similarly, students from poor or working class families who typically live in urban areas often struggle on standardized tests because of the majority of biased questions that are present on the tests. In his text, Unequal by Design, Wayne O. explains how these standardized tests are in favor of the white upper-class students who have the advantage of answering these biased questions correctly. Many of the standardized test questions require essential background information that is often not provided on the test, and some students may have no knowledge of this essential background knowledge. Without the necessary background information, it can be very difficult to answer these standardized test questions correctly. However, does one test per year truly outline a student's future success? In order to avoid these educational stigmas and biases, educators need to work together and towards a more progressive learning environment where all students are taken into consideration, regardless of race, background, ethnicity, etc. Horton and Freire make a great point as to how to go about creating this more fostering environment for all by writing, starting from people's experiences and not from our understanding of the world, does not mean that we don't want the people to come with us in order to go beyond us afterward. This movement for me is one of the many important roles of a progressive educator and is not always so easy. As educators, we need to go beyond our comfort zone and realize that in educating students to their greatest potential, they may one day surpass the teacher economically and class structurally, but that is what educators should be striving for. Similar to minorities, Native Americans are almost destined to be unsuccessful based on the way that the education system is run. In the novel Power and Place: Indian Education in America, Deloria and Wildcat explain that Native Americans attend schools on their reservations and are taught based on Native American beliefs and traditions, and then they attend college outside of the reservation where everything they have been learning their entire lives is then contradicted. This means that when a Native American student reaches college, they must change their entire way of thinking and mold it to Western societal ways of thinking in order to become successful. In Power and Place: Indian Education in America, Deloria and Wildcat explain modern education as having numerous problems facing modern technological societies, and the failure of modern education systems to find solutions to these problems, which are essentially moral and ethical in character, suggests something is fundamentally amiss in the dominant education systems of the United States. Unfortunately, lots of inequality and social hierarchy exists in modern education and is one of the main causes of students struggling to succeed. The students who are affected by this overbearing negativity are typically students who come from low socioeconomic status homes and minority students. By not providing these students with the resources that they need to succeed, equal opportunity, and the encouragement and reminder that they can succeed, these students are being raised and educated to believe that they are not capable or worth succeeding. Teachers need to ensure that they are getting to know their students on an individual basis and making sure that they are teaching to their students and not to the tests.